Open your Year 8 curriculum and read the content description K01 out loud. It describes the transformation of the ancient world to the early modern world. That word, transformation, it's not a neutral description. It's the name of one side in an argument historians are still having. Most units teach the fall of Rome as an event with a date, 476. The trouble is that nobody living in 476 thought an empire had just ended, and the historians who study it now cannot agree on whether anything fell at all. This is episode 5, same series, same promise, the content you need for a topic you need to sharpen. 10 minutes on a content description that quietly takes a position. The content description: the transformation of the ancient world to the early modern world, from the decline of the Roman Empire in Western Europe through medieval, Renaissance, or pre-modern Europe. It's the widest of the 6 descriptions in the selective. It spans roughly 1,000 years, and all the other 5 sit within it, which means if you teach K01 as background before the real content, you have skipped the frame that holds everything together. And here's the assessment problem specific to this topic. The standard asks the students to explain patterns of continuity and change across societies and time periods, not to list what came after Rome. A continuity and change claim needs evidence on both sides of the word "and." Most units teach change and skip the continuity entirely, which is precisely where the marks are. So, start with the date everybody teaches, and ask where it actually came from. In 476, a Germanic commander named Odoacer deposed a teenage emperor called Romulus Augustulus. No empire was declared over, no contemporary chronicle records the end of Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire carried on from Constantinople for another 1,000 years until 1453. 476 became the fall of Rome because later writers chose it, not because anyone alive at the time marked it. What replaced imperial rule with the West was not chaos, it was successor kingdoms, Frankish, Visigothic, and Ostrogothic. They kept Roman law, they kept Roman taxation where they could still collect it, they kept Latin as the language of administration, and they kept the Roman Church. Several of their kings sought titles and recognitions from Constantinople. These were inheritors, not demolishers. Something does go though, and it shows up in the ground rather than in the chronicles. Archaeology records a steep fall in material complexity across the western provinces. Mass-produced pottery disappears. Building quality drops sharply. Long-distance trade thins out, and coinage contracts. Ordinary people in Western Europe were measurably poorer in 600 than their great-grandparents were in 400. The institution that carries continuity through all of this is the Church. It keeps Latin literacy alive. It keeps written records secular. Administration can no longer manage them. It accumulates land on a large scale. And it provides a structure that reaches from Rome down to the village priest at a time when almost nothing else reaches that far. Faith and administration were the same institution. So the honest summary is that Western Europe got measurably poorer and at the same time kept most of its institutions still running. Poorer is not the same as darker. That is the distinction of the entire episode. 3 centuries later, Charlemagne's court pulls scholars from across Europe, standardizes the script that later printers would copy, and systematically copies classical texts. A great deal of what survives of Latin literature survives because somebody in the Carolingian world sat down and wrote it out again. That happens inside the period the label calls dark. The darkness gets named much later by a poet. In the 1330s, Francesco Petrarch describes the centuries after Rome as dark. He's not talking about castles or crops or disease or violence. He was complaining that the Latin prose of his own era was worse than Cicero's, a judgment about a writing style that became a verdict on an entire civilization. Edward Gibbon hardened it further in the 1770s and 80s. attributing Rome's collapse to what he called the triumph of barbarianism and religion. That framing held in classrooms for nearly 2 centuries. Then, in 1971, it turned over completely. A literary complaint from the 1330s, hardened by an 18th century historian, still being taught in schools long after archaeology stopped supporting it. Which brings us to the argument your curriculum has already joined, whether or not anyone in your faculty has noticed. 2 positions, and you need both. In 1971, Peter Brown published The World of Late Antiquity and effectively coined the term. He reframed the centuries of Rome as a period of steady transition and creative adaptation rather than collapse. In 1980, Walter Goffard went further, challenging the very idea of 5th century invasions and describing a process of accommodation instead. And from 1992 to 1997, the European Science Foundation ran a major program called the Transformation of the Roman World, involving 150 scholars and published as a Brill series. Then, in 2005, it came back the other way hard. Brian Ward Perkins published The Fall of Rome and the End of Civilization, arguing that the peaceful transformation theory is badly in error. His evidence is material rather than literary: pottery, housing, trade goods. Peter Heather published The Fall of the Roman Empire the same year and reached a comparable conclusion. Their shared objection is that transformation smooths out a period in which, as they read the evidence, a great deal went very badly wrong. Now, read your content description one more time. The transformation of the ancient world. ACARA has written on one side of a lively argument into a curriculum as though it were settled vocabulary. That is not an attack on ACARA. Every curriculum has to choose words. It is the single best source analysis opportunity in the whole Year 8 course, and it is sitting in the document your programming is already built from. Teach it that way, and you have taught historiography without buying into a single extra resource. 2 misconceptions. Students arrive believing that dark meant stupid, and that Rome ended in a particular year the way the reign ends. Teachers, including well-prepared ones, tend to treat transformation as neutral, modern, and a safe word. It's neither neutral nor uncontested, and Ward Perkins would tell you that at great length. So, what to teach on a Monday morning? 2 columns. Transformation, continuity of law, language, church, administration through a period of political change. Collapse, a measurable fall in material living standards and economic complexity. Both columns are evidenced. Neither is propaganda. Then, run one inquiry question. If both columns are true, why does it matter which word we choose? One classroom source. The Internet Medieval Sourcebook at Fordham University. It's free and it's built specifically for teaching. Then, 3 to read yourself. Brian Ward Perkins on The Fall and End of Civilization. Peter Brown on The World of Late Antiquity, and Chris Wickham's Framing of the Early Middle Ages, for the evidence base sitting underneath the entire argument. So, that's K01, the widest content description in Year 8, and the only one that hands you an argument instead of a narrative. The next episode, the roles and relationships of different groups, which is K02, and a tidy diagram of medieval society that turns out to have been written to win a fight. Tell me in the comments or by email which part of Word 9 you would like taught this way next. Thanks for watching.